evening, everybody. My name is Tanya Farrelly, and you're very welcome to the digital launch of this wonderful book, The Music of What Happens, the Purple House anthology of new Irish writing. And we're delighted this evening to be joined by 9 of the contributors who are going to read their work for us. A little later, I will be just saying a few words about the editing process. But first of all, I would like to invite Aoife Walsh, the commissioning editor of New Ireland, to officially launch the book.
Thank you, Tanya. My name is Aoife Walsh and I am the commissioning editor with New Ireland Books, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this evening's events to celebrate the publication of The Music of What Happens, the Purple House anthology of new writing, published by New Ireland Books this month and edited by Tanya. And thank you for joining us this evening virtually, wherever you may be. We are with you this evening from the Purple House Cancer Support Centre in Bray, County Wicklow, and I'd like to start by thanking Director Veronica and her team for hosting us tonight. Thank you also to Bray Literary Festival for supporting us in promoting the anthology later this month at their festival. Tanya and all of the excellent writers she has brought together for this book have made it a real joy to work on, and it has been our privilege to help Purple House celebrate 30 years of really hard work. In the time we have spent making this book, I have been to the funerals of 3 relatively young people who have passed away from cancer. We make a lot of books, and sometimes when I'm making them, I focus on the details. We have our checklists, we have the things that we have to do for all the pieces to fall into place. But along the way, every book gives you a moment to step back and reflect on the difference that it will make. With this book, The Music of What Happens, that moment came for me over the summer when I heard the news of yet another old friend who just had a cancer diagnosis and is now in treatment. No one asks to be touched by cancer, and yet we all are. It's personal. And so it's a personal and professional honour for me to officially launch The Music of What Happens this evening. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Veronica Leary, Director of Purple House Cancer Support.
Hi, good evening everybody. I'm Veronica O'Leary and I'm Director of Services at Purple House Cancer Support. And thank you, Aoife, for those lovely words. And thank you, Tanya, for all your hard work. And thanks to everybody who contributed to the anthology in so many ways. There are so many names to mention, but this was a dream of mine when I spoke to Tanya last year, that Purple House would celebrate 30 years this year with a book. And we kind of had decided early on that it wasn't going to be a cancer book, but it was going to be a book that would depict the journey we have had in Purple House Cancer Support for the past 30 years. And so many lovely, lovely stories and so many lovely poems. But one that's touched my heart a lot and it resonates with what Aoife says was Katie Boyland. And some of you might have heard Katie speaking this morning on East Coast Radio about her cancer experience. And when I was 21, I was diagnosed with cancer. It wasn't the life I would have chosen, but 12 years later, I got a recurrence when I was 35. And while cancer chooses, it doesn't choose, and we don't choose it, but it happens. And like the music of what happens, life happens. And we have to cope with what happens. And my life turned upside down. I had 2 young boys, but I felt there needed to be more. There needed to be more than the medical side. There needed to be help with life, with quality of life. So I started my journey 30 years ago, and I've met so many wonderful people, some sadly not with us now, but I am the better person for it. And I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for what I set out to do. So I just want to thank everybody here tonight, everybody that has walked through the doors of Purple House in the 30 years, and I think this book is a testimony to the goodness of humanity and what everyone contributes. So my heart goes out to everybody, and my sincere thanks to you all. And now I'm going to welcome our good friend Tanya Farrelly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica. And Veronica, I'm so delighted to be part of this project. As Veronica said, she approached me one evening. I teach the writers group here in Purple House, and we got chatting on our tea break, and Veronica was talking about the fact that the centre would celebrate 30 years this year. And she said, do you think we could publish a book as part of those celebrations? And of course, any excuse for me to get involved in a project like that. Anybody who knows me knows that I love to organise events, that I like to get involved with projects like this. And so I was so enthusiastic about it that the idea just took hold immediately. And that evening when I went home after Veronica had said this to me, I started to email potential contributors, and I told them about Veronica's idea, and I asked them, would you be interested in giving us a new piece of writing, a new poem, a new essay, a new story, an extract from a novel, whatever it is. The writers immediately asked me, was there a theme? And we had discussed this, myself, Veronica and Connor, and we thought, especially for me as a writer, we thought the best thing was to leave the themes open, you know, that writers would write about whatever they wanted. If that happened to be cancer, so be it. If it happened to be another theme, fine. So it was utterly up to the writers what they wrote about. As Veronica mentioned previously, one of our writing group members, Katie Boylan, contributed a very powerful essay called Emma's Wedding, which was talking about her own cancer diagnosis in her early 30s. I would advise anybody who has the book to read Katie's story. It's very, very affecting. Cancer has affected so many people. I lost my own mother to multiple myeloma in 2015, so this was a cause very close to my own heart. So I am just going to keep it brief, and I would like to thank Veronica. I would like to thank New Ireland, who became so enthusiastic about the project, and to thank each and every one of our contributors. And as I said, we have 9 of those contributors here tonight who are going to read their work. We have many more who are tuned in to tonight's launch. Before I introduce our first reader, I do want to thank the Purple House Writing Group, who always brighten up my Thursday afternoons. They are fantastic people. I love working with them. I'm delighted to say that 5 of them are included in this anthology, and I'd just like to give them a shout out. So thank you very much to Anne-Marie Byrne, to Katie Boylan, to Anne Hickey, to Rachel Blaney, and to Brendan O'Leary, and of course the Director of Services herself, Veronica O'Leary, who also contributed a poem to the anthology. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first reader tonight. So Adam Wyatt is an award-winning writer and recipient of the 2019 Kavanagh Fellowship Award. He's the author of 2 poetry collections, Silent Music and The Art of Dying, and essays, The Hidden World of Poetry. His 3rd collection, About Blank, will be published in 2020. He teaches online creative writing at adamwyatt.com. So you're very welcome tonight, Adam.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Tanya. It's lovely to be here. I should say the book's coming out now, 2021, due to COVID. It's lovely to be in this anthology, and I love the title, actually, The Music of What Happens. I think it's really evocative, and I think there's something very spiritual and life-affirming about it. The whole Finn McCool connection, I think, is very beautiful. And some great writing, you know, beyond it being, you know, for a very worthy cause, and it is a cause as well close to my own heart. I lost my father to cancer a few years back. But it's a beautiful anthology with some extraordinary writing in. So I'm just going to read my poem, which is called The Great Friend, and it's from the forthcoming book next year about blank. And my poem's called The Great Friend, and it's about the young Rumi, who became the Sufi mystic, poet and whirling dervish, which we know him for today. But it's really about a platonic love affair between a teacher and student, or a master and disciple. The Great Friend. In the autumn of 1244, a young Muslim scholar of Conn met a new arrival who had been travelling throughout the Middle East. This stranger put a question to the scholar. It remains one of the great mysteries. Whatever the question, the young scholar lost his breath and fainted. When he came round, the two talked and became locked in a stream of endless dialogue. Inseparable, they spoke for days without human need, like two musicians riffing, each one taking over where the other left off in a state of pure discovery. Late one night, mid-discussion, the friend went to attend a knock at the door and didn't come back. The young scholar fell silent and vowed never to speak again unless his great friend returned. He had fallen into what is known as the deep well of meditation, the narrow tunnel of mortal contemplation. For months, not a word passed his lips. Then, on his darkest night, he looked up and let out a savage howl. As he screamed, he found a new voice forming. The next morning, he headed to the market square and began to speak. Poetry and parables poured out. You are the sky my spirit circles in. My soul is from elsewhere. He started to sway and, outstretching his arms, whirled around, spinning between food stalls, weaving parables out of chickpeas, forming fables about burnt kebabs. A large crowd gathered. Some started to swoon and dissolve into laughter. Others moaned in ecstasy and cried. One young man began writing his every word down. The Conn scholar had lost all simile and became the thing itself, the lover, the beggar, the parched earth, the unfurling flower. He continued turning into the small hours, his great friend returning through him, a mute moon smiling in the wings.
Thank you very much, Adam. That was absolutely beautiful. For those of you at home wondering what the lovely lady in the purple dress is doing, running up here every few minutes, that is the wonderful Nessa O'Mahony, who is disinfecting our mic. We're making sure that we stick to regulations here this evening. So our next reader, and Adam mentioned that he liked the title of the book, and he also referenced Finn McCool. And I'm afraid I can't take the credit for the title, but the next reader can, who is David Butler. And David and I were just talking when I was trying to come up with a title, and we were thinking about the themes and what the book is about. And I said, well, it's I guess music is an important theme because it came up in quite a few pieces. And then I said, it's about things that happen in everyday life. And David said, aha, the music of what happens. I said, wow, that's incredible. And David said, well, I can't take the credit for it either. It's Finn McCool. So he then told me about the story that when Finn McCool was asked what his favourite music was, he said the music of what happens. So I came back to Veronica with that, and Veronica was equally impressed because we thought, yeah, this is the perfect title for this particular book. It is the music of what happens. So I would like to introduce David Butler. David Butler's third novel, City of This, from New Ireland, was shortlisted for the Kerry Group Irish Novel of the Year 2015. Dira Press published his second poetry collection, All the Barbaric Glass, in 2017. His second short story collection, Fugitive, is forthcoming from Ireland House. So please give a warm welcome to David Butler and Nessa O'Mahony.
Thank you very much, Tanya. In fact, it's Finn McCool via Seamus Heaney, so the late Seamus Heaney has to get a lot of credit for the music of what happens as well. It's an absolute honour to be in this collection. It really is. Like many of us, cancer has touched my family as well. Both my mother and my sister died of cancer, and a whole lot of uncles and cousins. But anyway, it was free choice of what we'd enter, and I thought I'd send in something a little bit comic in it. At least I think it's funny anyway. Whether you do or not is a different question. They say write about what you know, and this is about the particular hell when you can't see a mistake, a grammatical mistake or things like that, without the hairs going up in the back of your neck. Someone who's living in that hell. And he's managed to miss his fiance's 30th birthday, and he should be eating humble pie. So I'll take you into the story there. It's called The Black Eye, and it's about how this guy got this particular black eye. We're about halfway through the story. I wasn't hungry in the slightest. I'm no great fan of Italian cuisine at the best of times. Probably that's why Sabrina had picked the place. The vegetarian lasagna seemed the least worst option. With a glass of house red, what the hell? Merlot, I had little doubt. By the time the order arrived, we were at least talking. Which is to say, Sabrina was talking. The problem was, there was a party of 3 buccos over by the cashier's station, lounging boisterously underneath an antique map of the Bay of Naples. Rugby types. D4. Up to this point, I'd been able to block out their bluster and filter the import of what Sabrina was saying. But then, one of them came out with, "Dude, I was being ironic," when I'd lay odds that what he was being was sarcastic. Because irony, to my mind, implies a situation or circumstance. Olympic swimmer drowns in bathtub. Now that would be ironic. Curiously, the OED appears to side with the rugby heads on this one. Irony, noun. An expression of meaning, often humorous or sarcastic, by the use of language of a different or opposite tendency. You'd think the OED would be above populist concessions. Sabrina was staring straight at me. An interrogative stare, in which not a little bafflement was spangling. It declared, "You haven't been listening to a word I've been saying, have you?" I recovered the most recent substantive. Transylvania, go on. What about Transylvania? You've been looking up where we should stay. Where we should stay where? Brasov. This was an educated guess. It achieved the bare minimum required. So, her eyes narrowed. Which place do you think? Time to risk all on the turn of a card. Whichever is the most central. No, be worth the extra few bucks. I mean, how often do you go on honeymoon? Rhetorical. Then the master play. You? Equilibrium restored, Sabrina lost herself in her disquisition as our respective lunches gave up their warmth to the ambient air. And all would have been fine if Ross O'Carroll Kelly hadn't kicked off again about 5 minutes in. "No, you're all wrong, guys. 2001, England beat us. I know for a fact, because my father, had actually betted on them to win." Now, that was patent bollocks. I knew for a fact that 2001 was the year of the foot and mouth. And the year of the foot and mouth, we'd beaten England. The whole schedule had been thrown out of kilter. Half of the games had to be played in the autumn. And in 2001, Keith Wood had pulled off that wraparound try off the line out. OK, we'd already blown the slam up in Murrayfield, but that victory had been oh so sweet. There was the grind and shudder of chair legs being dragged back. Sabrina was on her feet. She crumbled a petulant napkin and dropped it on the table. Her anorak was hoisting up her back by the time she'd pushed out through the exit. To follow an incensed fiancé out of a cafe isn't as straightforward as you might think. First, there's a little matter of the bill to pay. With one eye on Sabrina's disappearing red hood, I scanned the room. And of course, that was precisely the juncture when no waitress was to be found. Helplessly, I peered at her fork, abandoned in the entrails of her spaghetti arrabbiata, as though she'd been searching for an omen there. Beside the newspaper, still cowering face down, the soggy brick of my vegetarian lasagna had begun to subside. I abandoned table and guilty newspaper and hurried to the cashier station, my haste registered if not remarked upon by the 3 wise men. I was hoping my urgency would somehow conjure the cashier. One of the trio, who bore a bizarre resemblance to Dick Spring, paused briefly before going on with his diatribe. "I still say it was an inspired substitution on behalf of Joe Schmidt." Ignore, no time. In the adjoining room, a waitress orbited the stairwell and cleared a far table with the consummate avoidance of my eye. I could see the red anorak recede toward the cobbles of Temple Bar like something out of Schindler's List. "Excuse me," I called towards the empty space, which the waitress had fleetingly filled. "And," opined Ross O'Carroll Kelly, poking a finger towards Dick Spring, "it was really tight post-match analysis on his behalf." "For Christ's sake," I cried. They stared. "It's on his part." "Sorry, dude, are you talking to us?" "It's on his part, it's not on his fucking behalf." Heavily, the three men stood, blocking my way to the exit. They were going to enjoy this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Okay, our next reader this evening, she didn't have to go too far there, is the wonderful Nessa O'Mahony. So Nessa is from Dublin. She has published 5 books of poetry, the most recent being The Hollow Woman on the Island from Salmon Poetry 2019. And her crime novel, The Branchman, was published by Ireland House in 2018. So please put your hands together for Nessa O'Mahony.
I may be a little high on Dettol wipe, so apologies for that. It's lovely to be part of this beautiful book, and thank you very much, Tanya, for asking me, and Veronica and New Island for making this amazing thing happen. I want to read this poem in memory of my cousin, Father Brendan O'Mahony, who died in Cork this morning, we just heard before we came here. And it's also a poem for my mum. Claddagh Ring. 2 hearts. Start that again. 2 hands, 1 heart, a coronet. Bought on Shop Street, tied with a bow for 50 years together. 1 hand veined blue, tremoring on his lap as he learned patience in corridors and waiting rooms. The other wore it proudly till flesh shrank on bone, the gold loosened. Their daughter wears it now, heart inward on the middle finger to show she's taken, that 2 hands grasped hers tightly once, loosely later, her heart crowned with love.
Thank you so much, Nessa. That was beautiful. We're now going to have a musical interlude. So I'd like to welcome local harpist from Bray, Rachel Duffy.
Thanks a million, Tanya. I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to start off with a very old harp piece from the 17th century, and it's called Queen Limni.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was beautiful, and we'll be hearing some more music a little bit later from Rachel again. So our next reader this evening is Lisa Harding. So Lisa Harding's latest novel, Bright Burning Things, will be published by Bloomsbury in March 2021. Her first novel, Harvesting, was shortlisted for the Kerry Group Prize. Lisa was voted Best Newcomer at the Irish Book Awards and won the Kate O'Brien Award in 2018. So please welcome, reading an extract from her forthcoming novel, Lisa Harding.
Good evening. Take off the mask. Such beautiful music. And I'm just going to interrupt the beauty with now with some kind of mania from my reading. But thank you to Tanya for inviting me to be a part of this very important and beautiful book. This is the opening section from my new novel, forthcoming with Bloomsbury in March 21, called Bright Burning Things. There she is, lethal and irresistible, my high-kicking sidekick. And there goes that minx of a song, impossibly beautiful. And there is the sky so high, and the light so bright, and the sand warm velvet beneath the soles of my bare feet. And here comes the rush, an intense feeling of connection with all that is right and good in this world. My son's sticky hand in mine as he stares at the sky, my dog trotting alongside, his black coat glinting in the sunlight. Don't look directly at the sun, sweetheart, it burns your eyes. But yeah, you do it too. I bend to kiss him on the forehead over and over as he laughs and pretend wrestles me away. We look like everyone else as we skip down Sandymount Strand. Dogs and kids, a mark of normality. No, ma'am, but then that's not unusual these days. Tommy breaks free and he careens like a drunk. No, that won't do. Push that one away. He runs unsteadily towards the surf, the frothy tongues of water that lick the sand. Go, Herbie, go. Mind Tommy. The dog bounds after him and the two of them frolic at the water's edge, and I feel wave after wave of delicious things, my body vibrating with them, fingertips electric heat pulsing through me. The fever builds and I find I'm stepping out of my trousers and pulling my t-shirt over my head, dropping them in a puddle at my feet before I sprint towards my boys. My imp is waving, beckoning me into the shimmering water. Hello, Elation, you spangly bitch. I'm in my bra and knickers, but that's okay because it's hot and others are in their swimsuits and my underwear could pass for a bikini. So this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. Herbie is barking wildly. He'd have been put down in a week's time, they said, if I hadn't taken him then. Who rescued who, the thought rises as I am submerged, the cold a tingle, adding to all the other tingles of the day, and my head is under and it's silky salty down here. My body feels strong as I push through the surge of water, the sunlight refracted like so many tiny stars, until my lungs are burning and my heart is thrumming in my throat. I turn on my back and float, staring directly at the concentration of light. When I close my eyes, a carnival of colours and shapes explodes behind my lids. Oh, Mr. Sunshine's working his magic all right. I crane my neck to see my boys. But there's a stranger, bending down to talk to Tommy. A distorted version of the happy song of moments before, Burrows and Grooves. Now the stranger is picking him up, not okay. Strike at the sea with sharp staccato strokes, fluid sloshing in my ears and mouth. As soon as my feet hit the shallows, I sprint, pushing the body of water away as if it were mere air. It's okay, sweetheart, I'm here. I'm here. I say, or I think I say, my voice warped and bouncing in my ears as I open my arms to gather him up. You really shouldn't leave a little one alone like that, the stranger says, an old woman who's cradling Tommy too close. Here, and she reaches into her bag to hand me a towel. Where are your clothes? I don't like the aura of authority about this woman who still hasn't let go of my son. Start to shake with anger and cold, purple patches breaking out on my arms and legs. It's okay, Herbie, I say, as I pat the dog on the head. Oh, that poor creature belongs to you. I thought it was a stray. The woman's voice sounds like a swarm of something biting and black with wings. Static builds up inside my head, so I have to shake it. Are you okay, dear? Falls out of the woman's mouth and it stings. Jesus, I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine, okay? Just give me back my boy and we'll be out of your way. The woman's grip on Tommy tightens. Perhaps you should dry yourself off first. Shaking with something else now, and it's rocking me deep inside. My voice is huge and swallowed, and I'm scared of what might happen if I release it. Breathe. In. Out. In. Out. The woman sucks in her cheeks, biting down on them, making her appear cadaverous, as if she might spirit Tommy away to another dimension. Is there someone I can call? Her voice, a hag's voice. I knock the phone out of her hand and grab my son from her arms, which are stick-thin with loose swaths of skin, feel repulsed by this old woman, her proximity, her bossy intrusion into our happy, happy world. The woman calmly bends to pick up her phone, which makes my reaction seem all the more extreme. Even when I can see myself like this from the outside, I still can't stop the tornado whipping up through me, a child thief, a kiddie fiddler, a dirty old bag, witch bitch crone cunt rip out of me as I run, a bawling Tommy clasped tight to my sopping bra, Herbie in step. Sprint to the car without stopping to pick my clothes up off the sand. People are staring, let them stare, they have nothing better to do. I throw Tommy in the back with Herbie, whose hair on his back is standing up hyena-like, before I turn the key which I left on the front right-hand tyre, a trick Howard taught me as I was forever losing my keys, good for something, the prick. Rev the engine and move away from the packed car park onto the congested road, my bare feet slipping on the pedals. Thank you.
Thank you, Nessa. The music of what happens, sponsored by Dettol. Okay, so thank you very much, Lisa, for that wonderful dynamic reading. And that was an extract from Lisa's forthcoming novel next year. Our next reader up is Maurice Devitt, winner of the Trócaire Poetry Ireland and Poems for Patience competitions. Maurice Devitt has been nominated for Pushcart, Forward and Best of the Net prizes, and been runner-up in the Court New Writing Prize, Interpreter's House Poetry Competition, and the Cork Literary Review Manuscript Competition. He published his debut collection, Growing Up in Colour, with Dira Press. Please give a big warm welcome for Maurice Devitt.
Thank you very much, and it's a real honour to be involved in this. It's an absolutely gorgeous production, so thanks very much to Tanya, to Purple House and to New Ireland. I'm just going to read my poem in Degrees of Separation. Degrees of Separation. Today it's your turn to walk your son to school. Stand on the step in the mizzling dark, like a paper boy waiting to be paid, while she prepares his lunch, straightens the collar of his coat, and issues her final clipped instructions. Before opening the door and passing him wordlessly into your world, secure in the knowledge that she has packed his favourite sandwiches and that 10 minutes talking about the match will never be enough to deflect from last night's tears. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maurice. A very touching poem. When I was organising the pieces that were sent to us for the anthology, I did something which seemed a little bit mad in the beginning because I thought I'm never going to be able to do this. But we twinned poems with certain stories because I found that themes were emerging organically. And one of the readers a little later this evening, John O'Donnell, his story is about fatherhood, and that was twinned with Maurice's poem, which you've just heard, about a separated dad. But next up, I would like to invite another poet, and that is Katie Donovan. So Katie has published 5 collections of poetry, all with Blood Axe Books. Her first collection, Watermelon Man, appeared in 1993, followed by Entering the Mayor, Day of the Dead, and Rootling New and Selected Poems. Her most recent collection, Off Duty, was shortlisted for the 2017 Poetry Now Award. She is the recipient of the Lawrence O'Shaughnessy Award for Irish Poetry. Please give a big welcome to Katie Donovan.
Thank you, Tanya, and congratulations to New Ireland, to Purple House, and to all my compadres here who are reading tonight. It's a really lovely occasion to be part of. We've all been touched by cancer, and nearly 10 years ago, my husband died of throat cancer. So this poem, called Beaming, is an attempt to reclaim the happy memories, because I do think cancer can rob us of those, and it's an attempt to grab them back for myself and for my children. They were very small when he died. Beaming. It's 20 years since I first watched him, dexterous and handsome in his tux, play cello along with plangent brass, oboe, the drum roll of percussion, innocent of what was to come. Now I sit with our children in the audience again. My boy, tall, 14, turns to share a smile. My girl, with her sea-green gaze and petal cheeks, swims deep in the swell of sound and the dance of coloured light. No high classical here. We are tuned to the signature notes of Spock, Yoda, and McFly, the transports of Hollywood sci-fi. The players sport costumes, festive as Solo, Vader, Rey. In the shelter of the music, I grieve for what was quenched in the onslaught of disease, marching like the stormtroopers of doom. When the last crescendo dims and the musicians take a bow, we float out of the hall, flanked by two golden chattering heads. I am proud. They flourish into adulthood, fingers alight with their father's gift. I beam as we walk along familiar streets, where their parents once took a post-concert stroll, shared a first kiss.
Thank you so much, Katie. That was absolutely lovely. And I'd like to invite Rachel now to give us another piece of music.
Thank you very much. This is an air called Air on the Lower, or Song of the Books. And then I'll follow that with a short composition of mine, The Gateway.
you, Nessa. These new times we're living in, it does take some adjustment. Okay, our next reader this evening is John O'Donnell. John's fiction and poetry has been published and broadcast widely in Ireland and abroad. Awards include the Irish National Poetry Prize, the Ireland Funds Prize, and the Hennessy Awards for Poetry and Fiction. He's the author of 4 poetry collections and a collection of short stories, which was published earlier this year by Dira Press, which is almost the same blue. So please give a warm welcome to John O'Donnell.
Thanks, Tanya. Can I join everybody else in firstly wishing well to Veronica and everyone in Purple House, and to thanking Tanya for editing and Aoife for publishing through New Ireland this wonderful collection. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoy it. These are the opening paragraphs from my short story, Reuben. Ma'am says, if she finds whoever did this to me, she'll swing for him. You mean them, I think, the twins, though I don't say this. I glance around the day room of the rehab. 2 of the other lads in wheelchairs are at a table, playing cards. That fool Sergeant Niambh, has he done anything? Would you not speak to him, Sean? Ma'am says, her eyes welling as she turns towards my da. When she starts up with this talk, though, Da looks out the window and says nothing. I thought at first it might be the shock of seeing me like this, but now I'm not so sure. Maybe someone's said something. Maybe he knows. Actually, Niambh did come in one time to see me. Well, Donny, he said, sitting down beside the bed I was lying in. Is there anything you want to say to me? I already told you, I said. I can remember nothing before you found me at the bottom of the quarry. He eyed up the wheelchair in the corner and then looked back at me. Would you like to make a statement, Donal? He said, taking out his notebook. Real formal, real sincere. We can do nothing without a statement. I think part of him really wants to get the ones responsible. But something else behind those hooded eyes was saying as he looked at me, well, Donny, I'm sorry for you, boy, but by Jesus, you deserved it. I don't think Fonzie Meany liked me anyway. It wasn't just my working down in Burger King at the plaza. No man was ever going to be good enough for his Aoife. His only daughter, only child, in fact. And with Aoife's mam long gone, there was just the 2 of them for years, like husband and wife they were. Fonzie knew me from around, though I wasn't a punter, so I never went into his shop. Meanies. As a name for a bookies, it was pure class. Pure gold, too. When he sold the shop to Boyle Sports, the word in Queely's was that he was minted. He'd enough anyway to build the house up on the hill for us and to put a white tent in his garden for the big day. You take care of her now, he said during his speech, the big silk waistcoated gut of him turning towards me. Do you hear me, Donny? I will, surely, I said. Aoife sniffled then and squeezed my hand. But there was no blub out of Fonzie. He just looked at me, head cocked, like he was aiming down the barrel of a gun. If there was one thing Fonzie and I agreed on, though, it was that neither of us was gone on the baby's name. I'm sure Fonzie had been hoping for Alphonsus, and my own dad would have loved it if we'd called him Sean. I don't even know how Aoife came up with it. She just announced it one night when we were sitting up in the big new house, waiting for her to pop. What about Reuben? She said. Where'd you get that? I said. Don't know, she said, her hand smoothing her bump. But I like it. He always slept really well. I'm no expert, but after 3 months he was sleeping through 5 hours a night, which everyone reckoned was pretty good. That wasn't the problem. The problem was when he was awake. We took him to the clinical psychologist when he was 2. We went private. Fonzie paid. The psychologist had a pair of glasses on a chain around her neck. She told us to keep a diary of every time Reuben screamed or rocked himself in the corner or refused to make eye contact. She also asked us about our family medical histories, especially the mental stuff, because there's often what she called a genetic component. Triad was another word she used, triad of impairments, and spectrum. When she told us a year later that Reuben was on the spectrum, Aoife began to weep. "What do you mean, spectrum?" she said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for that wonderful extract. And our next reader this evening is another poet, Catherine Ann Cullen. Catherine Ann is the inaugural poet in residence at Poetry Ireland. She's an award-winning poet, children's writer and songwriter. She has published 3 collections, including The Other Now from Daedalus Press, and 3 children's books, including All Better from Little Island 2019. She has a PhD in creative writing from Middlesex University. Please put your hands together for Catherine Ann Cullen.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you to Aoife and Veronica as well for the opportunity, and congratulations to Purple House on the 30th anniversary. I'm thinking particularly of my friend Sheila Yates this evening because of COVID, it's the first time in 12 years that we haven't come together, her friends, in September to celebrate her life. So we're missing that this time. This poem is called Triskeal, and Triskeal is the triple spiral. I spotted a Triskeal in an illuminated manuscript and also in Newgrange, and I began thinking about how it was a symbol of life and of death and of various other things. So this is Triskeal. I arabesque from the margins of your great books. You have not fathomed me. I am older than letters. I ripple from the first stone that skimmed the sea, turn in infinite circles towards you. I am the sweep of a quill, the flourish of a turning feather, the wind ruffling a wing. A seashell whorl in the border, the antlers of a great elk, a serpent's curled tongue. I mark time, sunrise at winter solstice, fireworks at year's turn. I am the petroglyph at the gateway, the threshold of the passage grave, the portal to elsewhere, the tendril curling towards light eternal, the dark roots of the cosmic tree, its luminous branches. On my 3 legs I hop from Athens to Sicily to Man. Call me Trinacria on Trevish Woor, Triskeal, 3 in 1, Trinity. I am 3 stools for milking a sacred cow, 3 seats for a fireside of stories, 3 tops spun on the hearth. Find me in the minaret of Samara, on the end papers of the Quran, in the comb of the crowing cock. I whirl in the spill of Hokusai waves, in a Van Gogh skyscape on a klimt dress. I am without corners. I say turn, turn again, change, remain. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to our final reader at this evening's celebration of the music of what happens, and that is Mia Gallagher. Mia writes novels, stories and non-fiction and has devised and written for the stage. Her critically acclaimed books include the novels Hellfire and the Beautiful Pictures of the Lost Homeland, and a short story collection, Shift. Mia is a contributing editor with The Stinging Fly and a member of Ace Adana. So please give a warm welcome to Mia Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Tanya and Nessa. Thank you so much for making sure that we're all safe and that our loved ones are safe. It's been amazing just listening to everybody coming up and reading their beautiful work, and just incredible. Thank you so much for having us in the anthology. Thank you, Tanya, for all your work as well. To everybody at Purple House for the brilliant work they're doing. But what's been really interesting has been listening to people's personal testimonies about the ones they've lost through cancer and about those who have survived through cancer. Because I think with the heightened feelings that have been occupying us as a nation and as a global community since the beginning of this year, it's easy to get into a very heightened and anxious state and forgetting that all along people have been just dealing with this stuff day in, day out. I would just like... honouring people as my fellow readers have. I'd just like to honour both my parents, my dad, who's a survivor, and my mum, who died not technically of cancer, but it contributed to her death 3 years ago. And also my dear friend, Ethna McGuinness, who was taken very early and who would have loved an event like this and would have been in the corner cheering everyone. I'm going to read from my new story, Slip, and I'm going to kind of just go for a little bit in the middle of it, and I won't do any explaining. I hope it will be self-evident. And I'm reading from my sheets because I got the book only this morning and I'd already practiced with these. The third time, it was like glass. Bitter, and though there wasn't a wind, the air had real edge. The tide was in, almost to the top of the rock. The girl with the little dog's head went in a few minutes after me, down our slip. No hat again, and from the feel of it, it was 7, and at the start of the winter, that's cold, although by February, it's grand. She did a few strokes of crawl, then some breaststroke, and she reminded me even more of a dog, jerking forward the way breaststroke does when it's not done right, little head craning, wet hair all stringy down her neck. The time before, she'd been in a bikini, olive green with a flower pattern, nice. But this time she was back in the old shorts and the sports bra. The water so cold it burnt my hands. I hadn't brought my gloves or my booties, though I knew I wouldn't be able to hold off for much longer. I'd gone out towards the buoy, which I knew I wouldn't reach again till summer, doing the crawl mainly, face out, only dipping the eyes in once or twice. Then I headed back, via the first steps in that sort of triangle. She'd gone in after me that time, so when I came out, I didn't feel bad to see she was still in there. I had to change fast as my body was lobster, patches of orange over my knees, and the trick is you have to fool the core, let it ride on its rush, imagine itself hot, then pull the gear on fast before what's inside realises all its heat has scooted out to warm the fingers and the toes. I was busy, wanting to get the gear on before my fingers stopped working, but not so busy I didn't allow myself a small moment of satisfaction to see that the girl with the dog's head was heading towards the second steps, the easy ones, only a short arc from the slip, because the time before, when it had that even stronger suck, so strong you could hardly crawl back against it, she'd struggled around to those same steps, the second ones, and got out there, and I had thought with a certain smugness, and kept on for the first steps, which were further, but the water was coming in too fast, too hard, bashing me away from them around towards the nook, and then I couldn't help remembering last winter after Tom went off to that place, and I'd gone in when it was wild, and the annoying Czech fella had told me to go down the first steps because it was madness on the slip, utter madness. And the Czech said, go down the shore side of the rail, Karen, not water side. And stupidly, I had listened. And once I was in, it had taken me, churned me, flinging me towards that nook, that dangerous corner where steps meet pier, and telling myself, no, don't panic. I had reached with my feet and found a ledge and climbed up, gripping the bockety concrete, disregarding the offer of a helping hand from the annoying Czech, Mr. Gallant. Yeah, right. And this had gone through my head the second time I saw the girl, the time with the bikini and the even stronger suck, me reaching for the rail at the bottom of the first steps and getting batted back, shoved instead towards that nook with its razor-hidden rocks. And in the end, I had to force myself to swallow my smugness and give up. and follow the invisible stroke prints of the girl with the little dog's head and scramble like a toddler up the second steps. So this last day, when it was like glass, I had expected her to do the easy thing and get out there again at the second steps, making her total stay in the water, both time and distance, shorter than mine. While I was changing, she'd left my field of vision, disappearing behind the shelter wall, and it was only when I went to the bars to twist out the togs that I saw her. Not climbing out or even loping along the concrete, no. She was still in, beyond the second steps, heading to the third ones, the small ones, Tom's steps. A face down crawl, and then she'd stop, duck, shake her head and bob around for a bit, hair ringing in 7 degrees. I didn't time her, but it was very long to be that cold. When I finished the togs, I dialed Tom's number. It went straight to voicemail like I knew it would, so I hung up for the beep. But then she was on her way back, her face and head crimson sore, and her eyes in the water. Not every stroke, just 1 or 2 at a time, but still, that was plenty. I passed her on my way out of the shelter. She was struggling a bit with the gear. Her face had gone greyish, and she didn't look what I'd call warm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mia, not only for a wonderful reading, but also for a wonderful performance as well. So, as we know, this is the launch of this book. And the last 6 months has been extremely difficult for everybody, personally, but also professionally. It's been a difficult time for writers. It's been a difficult time for anybody who works in the arts. It's certainly also been a difficult time for publishers. And I know at the beginning of all this, even, in April, May, myself, Veronica and Connor, we were saying, surely things will be back to normal by September. But that wasn't to be. So it would be very remiss of me now not to plug the sale of the book. So it is available in all good bookshops nationwide. If it is not available in your local bookshop, please do ask them and they will be able to order it in for you from New Ireland. It's also available directly from Purple House. If you just go onto the Purple House Cancer Support website, you can order it there. They will post it out to you, and the same with New Ireland as well. You can buy it directly. So I would now like to invite Rachel up to give us another beautiful piece of music to finish the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Rachel Duffy. you so much, Rachel. I'm just going to ask all of the writers in the room to join me in congratulating Veronica and Brendan and Connor and the whole team at Purple House Cancer Support Centre, and just to say a huge thank you for the wonderful work that you do, not only for the community here in Bray, but nationwide. Thank you so much. I also just want to thank tonight's contributors and all of the contributors to the anthology, to the viewers at home who've tuned in this evening. If you have enjoyed the event as much as we have, and I dare say we have, we'll actually be showing the event again as part of the Bray Literary Festival. We'll be broadcasting it on our YouTube channel on the 25th of this month, and you might just recommend it to a friend to tune in as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the event. I hope you have enjoyed the readings, and I do hope you will enjoy the book. Thank you very much. Good night.